be brief because I see that the Congresswoman has just arrived, so I'm going to be very, very brief. Because all of you heard the senator, hopefully, in the debate. You heard the senator talk about gun violence, which is a very personal issue for all of us here in California this week. The K-Hive is in the back. But very briefly, let me just tell you why I chose, almost a year ago now, to endorse our senator for president. I, along with many of my colleagues in the California Legislative Black Caucus, have spent many years working on criminal and juvenile justice reform in our state. And to know that we had someone who laid out a platform to really bring the nation in alignment with where California is currently. Because we know trying children as adults is a crime in and of itself. Yes. Yes. And so why? You know, Kamala has had one client her entire career, and that's us, the people. As district attorney, attorney general, and senator, she has taken on big fights to get justice for us, and she's won. She took on the big banks on behalf of homeowners. She fought big polluters on behalf of ignored, largely communities of color. She's held for-profit colleges accountable on behalf of veterans and largely poor students of color. She led the fight against Trump's anti-immigrant agenda, and she advocates on a daily basis for the voiceless and the vulnerable. Let's talk about timeliness for us here in California. She's already introduced a bill to make sure the executives of bankrupt public utilities won't be rewarded with big bonuses. That's particularly sensitive to us here in California. She can prosecute the case against Donald Trump. She's already taken the president and his administration to task for their corruption, their incitements of violence and crimes, and I'm convinced she'll do it again in this election. In closing, let me just say this. I don't believe that elections should be popularity contests. We have an obligation as voters, as leaders in our communities, as leaders of this party, to ask the tough questions. We have to elect people who have the skill set and the capacity to do the job they are running for. Yes. Yes. We have to dig deep and talk amongst ourselves, our family, and our communities to identify what are the critical issues that are most important to us. And then we have an obligation to ask those candidates those questions. And so when you pause, coming up Thanksgiving, and talk to your families about why 2020 is so important, that as communities of color, the fact that our very lives depend on this next election, yes. And if you don't believe me, look at the Supreme Court. The current occupant of the White House has had more appointments than he should have had. And I pray every night that Ruth Bader Ginsburg opens her eyes the next morning.
Real talk. Real talk.
When we recognize what is held on the balance, DACA, the current lawsuit, the very likely lawsuit in terms of whether or not I have control of my own body or not, those are issues that are deeply personal, that as a woman of color, we have history with in this country. And I don't know about you, but I am not going backwards. And so when you identify those questions that are critical to you and your family and the future of your children, I hope you remember it's not a popularity contest. It's about who can get the job done. The Congresswoman told us this morning in the Women's Caucus that we are fortunate as a nation to have such a large group of highly qualified people who want that hard as hell job in the first place. And the issue is not them beating up on each other, but making sure we are strategically preparing ourselves to take the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, OUT, out. so from my perspective, from my experience partnering with her as a member of the California legislature, when I think about issues that are important to me, my family, and the constituents I currently serve, criminal justice reform, rent relief and affordable housing, paid leave, combating the climate crisis, immigration reform, teacher fair pay, pay equity, a plan for reducing gun violence, bringing down prescription drug costs. Those are issues that Kamala D. Harris has put on the platform, and for those reasons, I believe she will be the next president of these United States of America. I hope you'll join us.